My name is Chloe Bennett, and at 24, I had just graduated from college with the highest honors after years of relentless work. But the moment that should have been my proudest turned into a nightmare right there at our celebratory dinner. My father, David, tapped his glass with a fork, flashed that smile I recognized all too well, and announced to the entire table, "Congratulations, but you're old enough to pay rent or get out." My mother, Sarah, just nodded quietly next to him. They had absolutely no clue that I'd been preparing for this exact moment for months, or that I was already the owner of my own house. The expression on their faces the very next day would be worth every single cent I had scrimped and saved. If you happen to be watching this, I'd be curious to know where you're from. Please go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button before we get into how I transformed my family's shocking ultimatum into the single best decision of my life. Growing up, you would have thought we were the perfect middle-class family. We lived in a nice 4-bedroom house in a pleasant suburb in Ohio. My father worked as a senior systems analyst for a big tech firm, while my mother, Sarah, held a part-time job at our local library. My younger brother, Liam, and I never really needed anything. We took family vacations every year, usually to the coast. We celebrated birthdays with big parties and Christmas mornings with mountains of presents. From the outside looking in, everything seemed picture perfect. But then, when I turned 15, things started to unravel. Dad came home from work one afternoon with a strange, hollow look on his face. He had been laid off. The company was downsizing, and even with his 15 years of loyal service, he was one of the first ones let go. Mom immediately picked up more hours at the library, but her income was barely enough to cover the grocery bills, let alone our mortgage. "It's just temporary," Dad promised us over dinner that evening. "I'll find something even better soon." But that something better never materialized. Months bled into one another, and the only jobs Dad could land paid a fraction of his old salary. His pride took a monumental hit. I would often hear him up late into the night, the faint glow of the computer screen casting shadows on his frustrated face as he endlessly scrolled through job boards. Mom started working even more, but the financial pressure was obvious. Bills began to stack up on the kitchen counter. The easy, light-hearted feeling in our home slowly evaporated, replaced by a constant tension and hushed arguments that would start after Liam and I were in bed. By the time I was 16, I knew I had to do something to help. I got a job at the local grocery store, bagging items after school and on weekends. My very first paycheck was for a little over $100, and I proudly handed it straight to my mother. "Oh, honey, you should keep this for yourself," she said, but I could see the wave of relief wash over her eyes. "I want to help, Mom," I insisted. "We're a family." What began as a sincere offer of help soon became an unspoken expectation. When the electricity bill arrived with a bright red past due notice, Dad looked at me pointedly. "Chloe, can you chip in this month? Just until I get back on my feet." I didn't mind at first. I took on more shifts at the grocery store and even added a weekend job waiting tables at a nearby diner. My grades took a small dip, but I managed to keep a solid B average, despite working nearly 30 hours a week while still in high school. By my senior year, I was covering all my own expenses, things like clothes, school supplies, and social activities. On top of that, I was contributing around $300 a month to the household. Dad had eventually found a steady job, but it paid about half of his former salary, and Mom was still at the library. Yet somehow, our financial situation never seemed to stabilize. What I didn't realize at the time was that my dad had picked up a gambling habit. He'd make stops at the casino on his way home from his new job, absolutely convinced he could win back everything we had lost. Mom confessed to me much later that she knew about it but felt completely powerless to make him stop. He would promise her it was the last time, every time, and then, days later, he would be back at the slot machines and poker tables. Liam, meanwhile, seemed to exist in a different reality. Being 3 years younger, he was completely shielded from our financial struggles. While I was working double shifts, he was playing video games and hanging out with his friends. When he wanted the newest gaming console for Christmas, the money was magically found. When I needed new, sturdy shoes for work, I had to buy them myself. "Your brother is still young," Mom would say whenever I brought up the unfairness of it all. "Let him enjoy his childhood." So I did. I just kept working, studying, and helping to keep our family afloat. I watched as my father grew more and more dependent on my income, not as a temporary bridge, but as a permanent fixture to patch his own failures. I saw my mother just accept this new reality without a single question, and I couldn't help but notice how they both treated me so differently from Liam, placing the weight of adult responsibilities on my shoulders while he enjoyed all the freedoms of being a teenager. When my college acceptance letters started coming in, I had a good selection of schools to choose from, thanks to my grades and extracurricular activities. But a full-ride scholarship to our local state university made the choice for me. I couldn't just leave my family in the lurch financially, even though a part of me was desperate to escape. "You were always the responsible one," Dad said when I told him my decision. But what he really meant was, "You were always the one we could count on for money." I moved into a dorm on campus, but I drove home every single weekend to work my 2 jobs. I sent money home regularly for bills. I called to check in on them every day. I continued to be the dutiful daughter, all while I watched my friends embrace the full college experience. I had to turn down party invitations to pick up extra shifts. Spring break trips were completely out of the question when the property tax bill was due. Through all of it, I kept telling myself it was temporary. Once I graduated and got a good job, things would get better. Once Dad finally got back on his feet, I could finally focus on my own life. Once our family's finances were stable, I could start saving for my own future. But deep down, a cold, uncomfortable truth was starting to take root. Nothing was ever going to change unless I was the one who changed it. College was supposed to be my path to freedom, but it just became another heavy obligation I had to juggle. A typical Monday for me started at 5 a.m. I'd wake up, take a quick shower, and try to review notes for my 8 a.m. business ethics class while choking down a protein bar. After my morning class, I'd have to rush over to my part-time job on campus at the admissions office, where I worked from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Then it was straight to afternoon classes until 5, followed by a quick, cheap dinner and studying until midnight. Tuesdays and Thursdays followed a similar, frantic rhythm. Weekends were no different. I'd drive home on Friday evening and go directly to the diner for the dinner rush. Saturdays were a double shift at the grocery store, and Sundays were split between the brunch shift at the diner and doing laundry before I drove back to campus. My roommate, Maya, was often just getting her weekend started when I was finishing mine. "You know, this isn't normal, right?" Maya said to me one Sunday evening. I had just stumbled back into our dorm room, completely exhausted from my shift and already dreading my Monday morning classes. Most college students aren't paying their parents' bills. I just shrugged. "They need the help." "But do they really?" she pressed. "Your dad has a job. Your mom works. Your brother is old enough to get a part-time job too. Why is it all on you?" Her questions made me squirm because I didn't have any good answers. The truth was, I had never really questioned the arrangement. It had just evolved so slowly, from me helping out during a tough time to me becoming the family's financial safety net. Before I knew it, I was the one paying the electric bill, the internet bill, and often the grocery bill as well. "The internet is about to get shut off," my mother would text. "Can you send $200 for the bill? Dad's car needs repairs. Can you help with the $500 mechanic bill? We're a little short on the mortgage this month. Can you contribute $800? Every single request came with this unspoken assumption that I would just comply, and I always did. I would scrape together whatever I had earned, survive on ramen noodles for a week, and send the money home. The brief thank you I'd receive would quickly fade, replaced by the next urgent financial demand. During my sophomore year, the requests became more frequent. I was now regularly sending almost 70% of my income home. My own expenses were cut down to the absolute minimum. I bought all my textbooks used, wore the same clothes for years, and never went out to eat unless I was working a shift at the diner and could get a free meal. It was around this time that Maya staged what she called an intervention. "This has to stop," she said, sitting me down one evening. "You're killing yourself working, while your family is just taking advantage of you." "They're not taking advantage," I protested weakly. "They need my help." "Then why isn't your brother helping? Why did your dad just get a new flat-screen TV? Why did your mom post pictures of their weekend getaway on social media?" I had no answers. The new television had appeared in their living room the same week I had sent money for what my father had called essential bills. The weekend trip had happened right after I contributed to what my mother had described as a desperate situation with the water heater. "You need to start saving for yourself," Maya insisted. "Open a separate bank account that they don't know about. Put something away every single month, even if it's just $20. Something that's just for your future." That night, I opened a new savings account at a completely different bank. I set up a direct deposit so that 20% of my earnings would go straight into that account before I could even be tempted to send it home. It wasn't much at first, maybe $50 a week, but it was something. It was mine. As my junior year started, I met a financial advisor named Mrs. Peterson through a campus workshop. She looked over my situation with deep concern. "You've taken on the burden of an adult while you're still trying to establish yourself," she noted. "This pattern will continue for as long as you allow it." With Mrs. Peterson's help, I started to educate myself about personal finance. I learned about budgeting, investing, and the crucial importance of setting financial boundaries. We worked together to create a plan for me to gradually decrease my contributions to my family while building up my own safety net. "Your first loyalty has to be to yourself," Mrs. Peterson reminded me. "You can't help anyone else if you're drowning." By my senior year, my secret savings account had grown into a respectable sum. I had landed a high-paying internship with a marketing firm that loved my work ethic and offered me a full-time position as soon as I graduated. For the very first time, I could see a future that wasn't completely defined by my family's needs. It was during this time that I made a decision that would change absolutely everything. With Mrs. Peterson's guidance, I began looking at starter homes in a modest but up-and-coming neighborhood, about 20 minutes from campus. The housing prices were still reasonable, and with my savings, my excellent credit score from years of meticulous financial management, and my new job offer, I qualified for a mortgage. I found a small 2-bedroom house with a little yard and a front porch. It needed some cosmetic updates, but it was structurally sound. The price was well within my budget, especially when I considered how much I had been giving to my family all those years. 3 months before my graduation, I secretly closed on the house. Only Maya and Mrs. Peterson knew. I scheduled the closing to happen during spring break, telling my family I was working extra shifts. I signed the mountain of papers with trembling hands, feeling simultaneously terrified and exhilarated by my own boldness. "This is the first day of your independent life," Mrs. Peterson said, as she witnessed my signature on the mortgage documents. I kept the house empty for those 3 months, visiting it occasionally to just sit on the floor of what would soon be my living room, planning where the furniture would go and how I would decorate it once I could afford to. But mostly, I was just preparing myself for the unavoidable confrontation that I knew would come when my family found out I was cutting the financial cord. Graduation was fast approaching, and with it came a reckoning that I both dreaded and desperately needed. Graduation day was bright and clear. I put on my cap and gown in the dorm room I had shared with Maya for 4 years, my emotions a tangled mess of pride, anxiety, and anticipation. "Today is about celebrating you," Maya reminded me as she helped fix my cap. "Try to enjoy it no matter what happens later." The ceremony was held on the university's main lawn with rows and rows of folding chairs facing a stage decorated in our school colors. As I found my seat among my fellow graduates, I scanned the crowd for my family. They were easy to find. My mother was waving enthusiastically, while my father was busy checking his phone. My brother, Liam, looked bored out of his mind, clearly there under protest. When they called my name, I walked across the stage with my head held high. "Chloe Bennett, Bachelor of Business Administration, summa cum laude," the dean announced. I accepted my diploma with a firm handshake, turning to smile at the crowd. In that one moment, looking out at the sea of faces, I felt a surge of accomplishment that no one could ever take away from me. This was mine. I had earned it. After the ceremony, my parents found me in the throng of graduates. Mom hugged me tightly and Dad clapped me on the shoulder. "We're so proud," Mom said, her eyes genuinely warm. 4 years, gone just like that, Dad added. "Time to join the real world now." Liam gave me a quick, obligatory hug. "Can we go eat now? I'm starving." My parents had made reservations at Giovanni's Trattoria, a mid-range Italian place near the campus. It wasn't the fanciest restaurant in town, but it was a step up from where we usually ate. As we were being seated, Dad made a big show of telling the waiter, "We're celebrating our daughter's graduation today." "Congratulations," the waiter replied with a polite smile. "The first round of drinks is on me." Dad proceeded to order an expensive bottle of wine for the table. Mom chose one of the pricier pasta dishes. Liam picked a steak that cost nearly $30. I just chose a simple chicken parmesan, already mentally calculating how much this celebration was going to cost me. Because despite Dad's grand gesture of treating me, I knew exactly who would be paying the bill. Through the appetizers, the conversation was light. Mom asked about my classmates, Dad asked about the commencement speakers, and Liam complained about having to sit in the sun for 3 hours. No one asked about my job plans or what I was going to do next. It was as if my graduation was just the end of something, not the beginning. As our main courses arrived, Dad cleared his throat and raised his wine glass. A toast to our graduate. "Chloe, we can't tell you how proud we are of what you've accomplished." I smiled and raised my glass, letting myself have that one moment of genuine connection. "You've always been so responsible," Dad continued, "always thinking of the family first. That's a rare quality these days, when so many young people only think of themselves." Mom nodded in agreement, her eyes getting misty. But then Dad's tone shifted slightly. "Graduation marks a transition into full adulthood, and with adulthood comes adult responsibilities." My stomach clenched. I knew exactly what was coming. "Your mother and I have talked about it, and we think it's time you started contributing more formally to the household expenses." I almost choked on my wine. "More formally?" "Dad, I've been paying bills since I was 16. He waved his hand dismissively. Yes, you've helped out here and there. But now that you'll have a real job, it's time for a more structured arrangement." "Here and there?" I repeated in disbelief. "I paid the entire electric bill last month, and the internet, and half the mortgage. That's all in the past," Dad said firmly. "We're talking about the future. You're old enough now to pay rent or get out." The noise of the restaurant seemed to just fade away as I stared at my father. His expression was completely matter-of-fact, as if he were just discussing the weather instead of delivering an ultimatum that completely ignored years of my financial support. "We think $900 a month is fair," he continued. "Plus, continuing to help with utilities, of course. You'll be making good money now, and this will still be cheaper than getting your own place." Liam snickered. "Welcome to adult life, sis." I looked over at my mother, desperately hoping for some sign of recognition, some acknowledgement of how absurd this was. But she was just studiously examining her pasta. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the rage building inside me. "After I supported this family financially through high school and college, working multiple jobs while maintaining a 4.0 GPA, you now want me to pay you $900 a month in rent, plus utilities?" "Don't be so dramatic, Chloe," Dad replied. "We've supported you your entire life. We put a roof over your head, food on the table. Now it's time for you to do your part." I wanted to scream. I wanted to list every single dollar I had given them over the past 7 years. I wanted to throw the expensive wine in his face and just walk out. But instead, I took a deep breath and said, "I'll think about it." That seemed to satisfy him. The conversation quickly moved on to Liam's summer plans, which apparently involved a road trip with his friends that my parents were helping to fund. I just sat there in silence, pushing my chicken around my plate, my appetite completely gone. When the check came, the waiter placed it in front of my father with a smile. Again, congratulations to the graduate. Dad looked at the bill, then slid it across the table to me with a wink. Consider this your first adult expense. It was $178. I put my credit card on top of the bill without a word, ignoring Liam's smirk and my mother's uncomfortable glance away. The drive home was completely silent. I just stared out the window, mentally calculating how much money I had given my family over the years and how much I had left in my secret account. By the time we pulled into the driveway, my decision was made. Tomorrow was going to be the beginning of my new life, whether they were ready for it or not. I couldn't sleep that night. I just lay in my childhood bedroom, staring up at the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that had been there since I was 10. The conversation from dinner replayed in my mind on an endless loop. The casual dismissal of my years of contributions, the sheer entitlement in my father's voice, the silence from my mother, the smug look on Liam's face. 6 months earlier, I had sat across from Mrs. Peterson in her small office, nervously twisting a tissue in my hand. "I need to make a change," I had told her, "but I'm afraid of what it will do to my family." Mrs. Peterson had looked at me with a mix of compassion and firmness. "Chloe, we've been reviewing your finances together for over a year now. Do you know what I see?" I shook my head. "I see someone who has contributed over $30,000 to her family's expenses while taking on student debt and working herself to exhaustion. I see parents who have come to expect this support as their due, and I see a pattern that will continue indefinitely unless you break it." She pulled out a folder that contained all the documentation we had compiled together. Bank statements showing my transfers to my parents, receipts for bills I'd paid, a spreadsheet tracking every single contribution. "Your starting salary at Apex Innovations will be $60,000 annually. If you continue supporting your family at the current level, you'll be giving them approximately $24,000 each year. That's 40% of your income." When she put it in those terms, the situation felt even more absurd. "You've saved diligently despite these demands," Mrs. Peterson continued. "You have $18,000 in your separate account. That's more than enough for a down payment on a modest home in several of the neighborhoods we've discussed." That day, we mapped out a plan. I would continue my contributions until graduation to avoid any conflict. In the meantime, I would work with a realtor to find a suitable property, close on it before graduation, and then move immediately after. Bernard, the realtor Mrs. Peterson recommended, was instrumental in finding my little house on Maple Street. He understood my budget constraints and my timeline. We looked at dozens of properties before finding the right one, a 1950s bungalow with good bones but very outdated decor. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen, and a surprisingly spacious living room with a fireplace. The owners are motivated sellers, Bernard had explained. They've already moved to Arizona and just want to close quickly. The asking price was $175,000. With my credit score, my savings, and a first-time homebuyer program Bernard helped me find, I secured a mortgage with monthly payments that were less than what my father was now demanding in rent. The closing had been nerve-wracking. I had taken a day off from my classes, telling my parents I had an important exam I needed to study for. Instead, I sat at a long table with strangers, signing document after document until my hand cramped. When the final paper was signed, Bernard had handed me the keys with a big smile. "Congratulations, homeowner." Now, lying in my childhood bedroom for what I knew would be the very last time, I felt a strange mix of sadness and resolution. This house held memories, not all of them bad, but it also represented a dynamic that had become increasingly toxic. At 6 in the morning, I got up quietly and started packing my belongings. I was surprised by how little I actually owned, despite having lived here for most of my life. My clothes fit into 2 suitcases. My books and personal items filled 3 boxes. My jewelry, mostly inexpensive pieces I had bought for myself, fit into a small pouch. By 7:30, I had everything stacked neatly by my bedroom door. I could hear movement downstairs in the kitchen, my mother's familiar footsteps and the sound of the coffee maker gurgling. Taking a deep breath, I carried the first suitcase downstairs. Mom looked up from the kitchen table, surprise crossing her face. "You're up early. Want some coffee?" "No thanks, Mom. I'm moving out today." Her coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. "What? Because of what your father said?" "Honey, he didn't mean you have to leave immediately." "I know," I replied, setting the suitcase by the front door. "But I've been planning this for a while. It's time." She followed me as I went back upstairs for the second suitcase. "But where will you go? Do you have an apartment lined up? You can't just leave without a plan." I smiled despite myself. She genuinely had no idea that I was capable of making plans without their knowledge or input. "I have a place," I said simply, adding the second suitcase to the first. By now, the commotion had woken up my father. He appeared in the hallway, his hair disheveled, his robe hastily tied. "What's all this?" he demanded. "Chloe says she's moving out," Mom explained, wringing her hands. Dad looked at the suitcases, then at me, his expression shifting from confusion to anger. "Because of last night?" "For God's sake, we were just having a conversation about adult responsibilities. There's no need for dramatics." "This isn't about last night," I said, returning upstairs from my boxes. "This has been my plan for months. I'm starting my new job on Monday, and I need to be settled in my new place before then." "New place?" Dad followed me up the stairs. "What new place?" "You can't afford a place of your own yet. You need to build up your savings first." The irony of him lecturing me about savings when he had systematically drained mine for years was almost laughable. "My new place is all taken care of," I said, lifting a box of books. "I've been saving and planning for this." "Saving?" Dad's voice rose. "How could you be saving when you've been helping us with expenses?" I didn't answer, focusing instead on carrying my belongings downstairs. Mom was now sitting on the bottom step, looking lost. Liam had emerged from his room, watching the scene with unusual attentiveness. "The moving company will be here at 9, I announced, checking my watch. "I just need to get everything downstairs before they arrive." "Moving company?" Mom's voice was faint. "Chloe, this is all so sudden. It wasn't sudden to me. It was the culmination of years of growing awareness and months of careful planning. But I understood that to them, it seemed to come out of nowhere. They had never once considered that I might have a life separate from their needs. "You'll still help with the bills, right?" Dad asked, his anger giving way to concern. "Even if you're not living here." And there it was. Not worry about my well-being or sadness at my departure, but immediate concern about how my decision would affect their finances. "No," I said, the single word feeling like both a betrayal and a liberation. "I won't be paying your bills anymore." The silence that followed was profound. My father's face flushed a deep red. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Liam just looked from them to me, finally seeming to grasp the dynamics at play. "You can't just abandon your family," Dad sputtered eventually. "I'm not abandoning anyone," I replied. "I'm simply starting my own life. You always said that was what you wanted for me." The moving truck arrived precisely at 9 a.m., and 2 men efficiently loaded my meager belongings. I did a final sweep of my room, checking drawers and closets for anything I might have forgotten. As I turned to leave, I noticed my mother standing in the doorway, looking smaller somehow. "I didn't realize how little you have," she said softly. "After all these years." It was the closest she had come to acknowledging the imbalance that had defined our relationship. I hugged her briefly, then headed downstairs, where my father was arguing with the movers about their parking position. "Dad," I interrupted, "I'm leaving now. I'll call you in a few days." He turned to me, his expression a complex mix of anger and disbelief. "This is how you repay us for everything we've done for you? By running away the moment we ask you to contribute?" The unfairness of his statement struck me like a physical blow. But instead of arguing, I simply handed him an envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "A copy of my new address in case of an emergency," I replied, "and a record of the financial contributions I've made to this household over the past 7 years. I thought you might want to review it before we talk again." Then I walked out the door, climbed into my car, and followed the moving truck to my new home and my new beginning. The moving truck pulled up in front of my house at 9:45 a.m. My house. The phrase still felt strange in my mind. The modest bungalow with its faded blue paint and white trim looked exactly as I remembered from my previous visits, but now it was mine. I parked behind the truck and sat for a moment just taking in the sight. The small front yard needed attention. The grass was overgrown and a few weeds were pushing through cracks in the concrete path. The porch had a slight sag on one side and the gutters could use a cleaning, but the bones were good, and it was mine. Every single imperfection represented freedom. The movers, Tim and Carlos, unloaded my few possessions quickly. When all the boxes and suitcases were stacked in the living room, Tim handed me a clipboard to sign. "That's it?" he asked, looking around. "Nothing else coming?" "No," I replied, "just starting out." Carlos nodded approvingly. Best way to do it. No clutter. Fresh beginning. After they left, I stood in the center of my empty living room, overwhelmed by the silence and the space. I had furniture being delivered later that day, the bare essentials I had ordered online the previous week. A bed, a couch, a small dining table with 2 chairs. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The rest of the morning was spent unpacking my clothes and personal items. I had bought cleaning supplies earlier in the week and stored them in the kitchen cabinet, so I took some time to wipe down counters and sweep floors. The house had been cleaned before closing, but it had sat empty for several weeks and dust had accumulated. Around noon, a knock at the door startled me. I opened it to find an older woman with silver hair and bright eyes standing on my porch. "Hello there," she said warmly. "I'm Doris Abernathy from next door. I saw the moving truck earlier and wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood." She held out a ceramic dish covered with foil, just a simple casserole. Moving day is exhausting, and everyone needs to eat. I accepted the dish with genuine gratitude. "Thank you so much. I'm Chloe Bennett. I just graduated college, and this is my first house." Doris beamed. "How wonderful. A young homeowner. That's not something you see every day anymore." We chatted for a few minutes, and Doris filled me in on the neighborhood. The couple across the street who had lived there for 30 years, the young family 2 doors down with twins who had just started kindergarten, the best day for trash collection, and which local grocery store had the freshest produce. "If you need anything at all, you just come knock," she said as she prepared to leave. Oh, and the previous owners left some perennial bulbs in the garden. They'll come up next spring, beautiful tulips and daffodils. After Doris left, I felt slightly less alone. The idea that flowers planted by the previous owners would bloom in my garden next year gave me a strange sense of continuity, a connection to the history of this place that was now mine. The furniture delivery arrived at 3 p.m. 2 men efficiently assembled my bed frame and positioned the couch and table according to my instructions. By 5 o'clock, I had a semblance of a home. The bed was made with new sheets and a comforter I had ordered online. The couch faced the small fireplace. The dining table sat in the sunny corner of the kitchen. That first night alone in my house was both terrifying and exhilarating. Every creak and settle of the old building made me jump. The shadows seemed different from those in my childhood home. The street noises were unfamiliar, but underlying the nervousness was a profound sense of accomplishment. I had done this. I had created this opportunity for myself, despite years of financial drainage and emotional manipulation. I slept fitfully that first night, waking several times to the unfamiliar surroundings. By morning, though, I felt more settled. I made coffee in the new coffee maker I had treated myself to and sat at my little table, planning my day. Monday would be my first day at Apex Innovations, but I had the weekend to continue organizing my new home. On Sunday evening, my phone began buzzing with texts from my family. I had deliberately kept my phone off for most of the weekend, needing space to process the enormous change in my life. Now, the outside world was intruding. Mom, hope you're settled in. Please let us know you're okay. Dad, the internet bill is due Tuesday. Will you be sending money? Liam, Dad is freaking out about bills. What did you do?" I responded only to my mother, assuring her I was fine and settled in my new place. To the others, I maintained silence. It was harder than I expected. Years of conditioning had taught me to respond immediately to financial requests, to prioritize their needs above my own comfort or plans. Breaking that pattern felt almost physically painful. Monday came, and with it, my first day as a marketing coordinator at Apex. The day passed in a blur of new faces, orientation sessions, and paperwork. By the time I returned to my little blue house, I was exhausted but exhilarated. This was the beginning of my career, my independent life. Tuesday brought more texts from my father, each one increasingly urgent. "Dad, the electricity bill is past due. They're threatening to shut it off." "Dad, did you get my message about the internet bill? It's important for Liam's schoolwork." "Dad, Chloe, you cannot just ignore your family responsibilities." On Wednesday, my mother called during my lunch break, her voice tight with worry. "Honey, I know you're establishing your independence, and I respect that, but your father is very stressed about the bills. Could you just help us out one more time while we figure things out?" "Mom," I said gently, "I've been helping out one more time for 7 years. Dad needs to figure out how to manage the household budget without my income." "But the electricity might be shut off tomorrow," she said, her voice trembling. "And the internet already has been. Liam has a paper due." The guilt was immediate and overwhelming. I almost caved right then, almost offered to pay the bill just this once. But Mrs. Peterson's voice echoed in my mind. "This pattern will continue as long as you allow it. I'm sorry, Mom. I can't help anymore. Dad has a job. You have a job. The two of you need to figure this out." Thursday evening, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my entire family standing on my porch. Dad looked angry. Mom looked anxious. Liam looked uncomfortable. "This is where you live now?" Dad asked without preamble, looking past me into the house. "You bought a house?" "Yes," I replied, blocking the doorway. "Would you like to come in?" They filed past me into the small living room. Dad immediately began examining everything, checking the fireplace, looking at the ceiling, opening doors to inspect other rooms. Mom sat cautiously on the edge of the couch, her hands folded in her lap. Liam wandered into the kitchen, opening the refrigerator without asking. "How did you afford this?" Dad demanded. "Where did the money come from?" "I saved," I said simply, "and I qualified for a first-time home buyer program." "Saved from what?" His voice rose. "You gave us every spare penny." "Not every penny," I corrected. "I set aside a portion of my earnings for my future. I've been doing it for years." "So you lied to us," he accused. "All those times you said you were broke, that you couldn't help more with the bills, you were hiding money." Several of my new neighbors were out in their yards, pretending not to watch the confrontation unfolding on my porch. Doris had come out to water her flowers, her concerned gaze flickering over to us occasionally. "I never lied," I said firmly. "I contributed thousands of dollars to your household. I worked multiple jobs through high school and college to help support the family, but I also protected myself because no one else was going to." "We're your parents," Mom interjected. "We've always protected you." "Have you?" I asked, looking directly at her. "Or have you protected Dad and his poor financial choices at my expense?" Her gaze dropped to her hands. "The electric company shut off the power this afternoon," Dad said, his anger giving way to desperation. "The house is dark. The food in the refrigerator will spoil. Is that what you want?" "Of course not," I replied. "But I want you to understand that it is not my responsibility to fix this. It never should have been." Liam had returned from his inspection of my kitchen. "So what, you're just gonna let us suffer because you're mad about paying rent?" "That's cold, Chloe. This is not about rent," I said, my own frustration building. "This is about 7 years of supporting this family while being treated like a personal ATM. This is about Dad's gambling and Mom's enabling, and you never having to contribute a dime while I worked myself to exhaustion." The word gambling hung in the air. Liam looked at Dad in confusion. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "You don't know what you're talking about," Dad blustered, but the fight was leaving his voice. "I think I do," I replied, "and I think it's time we all acknowledge the reality of our family dynamic. How dare you accuse me of gambling?" my father said, his voice dangerously low. "After everything we've done for you." "Dad, please," I replied, trying to keep my tone even. "Let's be honest with each other for once. I know about the casino visits. I know about the online poker accounts. I know about the loans." His face paled slightly, but he maintained his defensive posture. Everyone needs recreation. A few games here and there isn't gambling. Mom was staring at the floor, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. Liam looked confused, his eyes moving from Dad to me and back again. "What is she talking about?" he asked Mom. "Dad doesn't gamble." The silence that followed was answer enough. Liam's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "Is that true?" he pressed. "Is that why we're always broke, even though you and Mom both work and Chloe has been paying bills?" "Your sister is exaggerating," Dad insisted. "And regardless, our financial situation is none of your concern. What matters now is that your sister has abandoned her family obligations and left us in a desperate situation." I walked to my new dining table where my laptop sat and opened a spreadsheet I had created with Mrs. Peterson's help. "I think we need to look at some facts." I turned the screen so they could all see it. "This is a record of every financial contribution I have made to our household since I was 16 years old. Every bill payment, every grocery purchase, every direct deposit to your account." The spreadsheet was meticulous, with dates, amounts, and descriptions for each transaction. 7 years of financial support laid out in black and white. "The total at the bottom is $87,342, I said. "That is how much I have contributed to our family while working minimum wage jobs and attending school full-time." Mom gasped. Dad's face flushed red. Even I was shocked seeing the number in its entirety. Somehow, adding it all up made the situation even more stark than I had realized. "That can't be right," Dad muttered, leaning closer to examine the figures. "You're making this up." "I have receipts and bank statements for every single entry," I replied. "This isn't an estimate. This is the exact amount I have given to support our family while you gambled away your paycheck and Mom pretended not to notice." Mom let out a sob, covering her face with her hands. "I didn't know what to do," she whispered. "He kept saying it was the last time, that he would win it all back." "That's what addicts always say," I said gently. "But it's never the last time without real help." Liam had moved to look at the spreadsheet, his expression hardening as he scrolled through the entries. "You paid for my graduation party?" he asked, pointing to an entry from the previous year. Dad said he saved up for it. "I paid for a lot of things that were supposedly from Dad," I confirmed. "Birthday gifts, Christmas presents, car repairs." "I paid you back for some of those," Dad protested weakly. "Some," I agreed. "A small fraction." Liam turned to our parents, anger evident on his face. Why was Chloe paying for everything? Why did neither of you ever tell me what was really going on? "We wanted to protect you," Mom said, finally looking up. "We didn't want you to worry about adult problems. So instead, you let Chloe carry everything?" Liam's voice rose. "She's only 3 years older than me." She was still a kid, too. His defense of me was unexpected and touching. For years, I had resented his carefree existence while I struggled under the weight of family obligations. Now I realized he had been as much in the dark as I had been. "The point is," Dad said clearly, trying to regain control of the conversation, "we are in crisis now. The electricity is off. We need help." I closed the laptop and faced my family. "I am willing to help, but not by giving you money. That approach hasn't worked for 7 years, and it won't work now." "What does that mean?" Dad asked suspiciously. "It means I will help you develop a realistic budget based on your actual income. It means Dad needs to get help for his gambling addiction. It means Mom needs to stop enabling destructive behaviors. And it means Liam might need to get a part-time job to contribute, just like I did at his age." Gambling addiction is a strong term, Dad mumbled. Is it? I asked. How much have you lost in the past year alone? How many times have you promised to stop? How many bills have gone unpaid because the money went to gambling instead? He had no answer. I own this house outright, I said, the statement causing all three of them to stare at me in shock. No mortgage. I saved enough for a substantial down payment, and the first-time homebuyer program covered the rest based on my income and credit score. That's impossible, Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. Not impossible when you've been saving since you were 16 and recently received a signing bonus from your new employer, I replied. Not impossible when you've been learning about financial planning instead of looking for the next quick win. The reality of my independence was finally sinking in. My father's face had gone from red to pale, the full implications becoming clear. I would not be returning to rescue them. I would not be sending money. The ATM they had relied on for years was permanently closed. So that's it? Dad asked, a note of desperation creeping into his voice. You're just cutting us off completely? I'm giving you a choice, I clarified. Option 1. I help you create a financial plan. Dad seeks treatment for gambling addiction. Mom takes a more active role in household finances, and Liam contributes through part-time work. We rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. And option 2? Mom asked quietly. Option 2 is that you continue as you have been, but without my financial support. You figure it out on your own. That's not much of a choice, Dad muttered. More of a choice than I had at 16, I replied evenly. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken emotions. Years of resentment, manipulation, and misplaced responsibilities hung between us. Finally, Liam spoke up. I want option 1, and I already applied for a job at the grocery store where Chloe used to work. Mom looked at him in surprise, then at me. I want option 1 too. I should have been stronger years ago. I'm sorry, Chloe. All eyes turned to Dad. He stood rigid, pride warring with necessity on his face. You really own this house? He asked again. I nodded. And we might lose ours if things don't change, he acknowledged reluctantly. The second mortgage you took out last year without telling Mom is catching up to you, I said, revealing that I knew even more than they thought. Mom gasped. A second mortgage, David? You said that was a small personal loan. Dad's shoulders slumped. The facade finally crumbled completely. I'll try option 1, he said, his voice barely audible. But I don't have a problem. I can stop any time. That's the first thing we'll need to address, I said firmly. You can't solve a problem you won't acknowledge. As they prepared to leave, the reality of their situation visibly weighed on them. No electricity at home, mounting bills, secrets exposed. The dynamic had shifted irreversibly. We'll talk tomorrow about next steps, I said as they stood on my porch. For tonight, you can stay at the Comfort Inn on 4th Street. I'll call and pay for one night while you figure things out. It was the only financial assistance I was willing to offer, a buffer to ease the transition rather than a return to old patterns. As their car pulled away from my house, I felt a complex mix of emotions: guilt for their predicament, anger at years of exploitation, hope that real change might be possible. But most of all, I felt an overwhelming sense of liberation. The truth was finally out in the open, and with it came the possibility of healing. 3 months after that confrontation on my porch, life had changed dramatically for all of us. My little blue house had become truly mine, with personal touches that made it feel like home. I had painted the living room a warm cream color, hung curtains in the bedrooms, and planted flowers in the front yard with advice from Doris. Each change, no matter how small, represented my independence and growing sense of self. At work, I was thriving. My position at Apex Innovations challenged me in ways school never had, and my supervisors had already recognized my work ethic and organizational skills. A small promotion had come after just 2 months, along with the responsibility of managing our social media accounts. The stability of a regular paycheck that was mine alone felt like a luxury after years of immediately dividing my earnings among various family needs. The relationship with my family had evolved into something I could not have imagined on that tense graduation night. It had not been easy, and there had been setbacks, but progress was undeniable. Dad had initially resisted the idea of attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings, insisting he could control his habit without help. It took the mortgage company sending a formal notice of foreclosure proceedings to finally break through his denial. The night he received that letter, he called me in tears, something I had never witnessed before. "I don't want to lose our home," he had said, his voice breaking. "I don't want to lose my family. Please help me." The next day, I drove him to his first GA meeting. He'd gone 3 times a week since then. The process was difficult for him, requiring an honesty and vulnerability he had never shown before. But for the first time, he was trying. Mom had started attending support group meetings for the families of addicts, learning how her enabling behavior had contributed to the problem. "I thought I was protecting everyone by keeping the peace," she told me over coffee one Sunday afternoon, "but I was just making it possible for the situation to continue. I failed you, Chloe. I let you carry burdens that were never yours to bear." Her acknowledgement of my experience was healing in ways I had not expected. For years, I had felt invisible in my own family, valued only for what I could provide financially. Having my mother see me, truly see me, was a gift. Jake had surprised everyone with his response to the family crisis. He had secured a part-time job at the grocery store and contributed his earnings to the household expenses. More importantly, he had stepped up emotionally, often mediating between our parents when tensions rose during financial discussions. "I never realized how much you did for us," he had told me one evening when he visited my house. "I was so caught up in my own life that I didn't see what was happening right in front of me. I'm sorry for being such a self-centered jerk." His apology meant more than he could know. The resentment I had carried toward him for years began to dissolve, replaced by a genuine fondness for the young man he was becoming. As for me, the most significant change was internal. The constant anxiety about money that had been my companion since adolescence was gradually subsiding. I was learning to spend on myself without guilt, to save for my future without fear, and to establish boundaries without apology. Part of that growth included dating for the first time in years. Between work and family obligations, romantic relationships had seemed an impossible luxury during college. Now I was seeing Vincent, a graphic designer I had met through work. Our relationship was still new, but his respect for my independence and understanding of my family history made him easy to be with. My friendship with Maya had deepened as well. She had been right all along about my family dynamic, and her unwavering support had been crucial during the difficult transition. We met weekly for dinner, alternating between her apartment and my house, sharing stories and advice as we navigated early adulthood together. The family financial situation had stabilized somewhat. With Dad's gambling under control, Mom's new job, and Liam's contribution, they had managed to negotiate with the mortgage company and keep the house. They were on a strict budget that I had helped create, but did not fund. Sometimes they slipped up, and occasionally Dad would hint about needing help with an unexpected expense, but I maintained my boundaries with gentle firmness. "I can help you figure out how to handle that within your budget," I would offer, instead of money. "Or we can look at what expenses might be reduced this month to cover it." It wasn't always easy. Years of conditioning had trained me to feel a desperate need to rescue them at any cost to myself. Sometimes the guilt was overwhelming, especially when Mom mentioned having to cancel small luxuries, or when Liam talked about delaying his college plans to work more hours. But I reminded myself that true help meant supporting their independence, not fostering dependence. One Sunday evening, almost exactly 3 months after our confrontation, my family came to my house for dinner. It was our new tradition, a weekly meal together that symbolized our changing relationship. I had prepared a simple but delicious meal, and we sat around my small dining table, the conversation flowing more easily than it had in years. "I have some news," Dad announced as we finished dessert. "I've been offered a position at Anderson Technology. It's not a management level like my old job, but the salary is better than what I'm making now, and there's room for advancement." "That's wonderful," Mom exclaimed, genuine pride in her voice. "Congratulations, Dad," I added, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "You deserve this opportunity." He squeezed back, his eyes suspiciously bright. "I couldn't have done it without all of you, especially you, Chloe. Your tough love saved this family even when we fought against it." His acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. For so long, I had wanted nothing more than for my parents to see me, to value me for more than my financial contribution. This simple recognition felt like the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. As they prepared to leave that evening, Mom hugged me tightly. "I'm so proud of the woman you have become," she whispered. "You taught us all what real strength looks like." Standing on my porch, watching their car drive away, I felt a sense of peace I had not experienced in years. The journey had been painful, the confrontations difficult, and the changes challenging. But through it all, I had discovered my own worth, beyond what I could provide for others. I had learned that a true family supports each other's growth rather than exploiting each other's weaknesses. Most importantly, I had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop rescuing them and instead stand beside them as they learn to rescue themselves. Life wasn't perfect. My family still struggled at times. I still battled old habits of over-responsibility. But we were all growing, healing, and building something healthier together. And that was worth every difficult conversation, every painful boundary, and every brave step toward change. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones for your own well-being? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we are not alone in these challenging family situations can be incredibly healing. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that taking care of yourself is not selfish. It is necessary for truly being able to care for others. The end of the story.